I asked for help from Brenda's office in listing the people to whom I should make obeisance when I started my little talk. And the list got so long of the dignitaries of whom I should take notice that I've sort of backed away from it, and I'm simply going to say Chancellors Wilson and Cecil, Presidents Gertler and Gooch, Principal Esterhammer, and all other distinguished members of the party, and most important, of course, fellow graduates. And then I'm going to add at the end, with less formality, old friends, members of my family, of whom the youngest, Sophie, at 3, deserves mention, for what does Sophia mean except wisdom? I cannot begin to express how grateful I am for this honor you are bestowing on me, bringing me back to the place where my serious life began. Graduates, I expect you partly know how lucky you are. You have been nursed for 4 years by one of the greatest universities in the world, and now you are expected to spread your wings and fly by the seat of your pants. This is my response to watching an amazing documentary about the recovery of the bald eagle, recovery from generations of ignorant farmers who shot the beautiful creatures and then poisoned them with DDT. Now, back in strength, the hatchlings, 2 to a nest, spend several days practicing their wing strength on the edge of the Erie, and then suddenly dare to take off. The courage derives from necessity, the expectation of their parents that they will not be nestlings indefinitely. I have been warned to be short, and I am short. But short I shall be. First, I shall tell you a joke. Then I shall read you one stanza of a famous poem, which was, even though it was only half finished, thousands of stanzas long. If nothing else, I am merciful. Then I will tell you a short story, and finally I shall draw a few recommendations from all 3. Okay. I will start with a joke, which is also an aphorism. An aphorism is a fragment of old wisdom peppered with the surprise of the new. The early bird gets the worm, but the second mouse gets the cheese. The message of this aphorism matches that of the fragment of poem that follows. The fragment comes from Spenser's Faerie Queene, an allegorical romance about the ethical life. In the 3rd book, the maiden knight Britomart, in full armor, storms into the castle of the fearful enchanter to rescue a girl he has captured on her wedding day, imprisoned and tortured, the whole thing being an allegory of the mating and dating customs of Spenser's day. Britomart finds herself in a long, dark, scary hall in front of an iron door. And as she looked about, she did behold how over that same door was likewise writ, be bold, and everywhere be bold. That much she mused, yet could not construe it, by any riddling skill or common wit. At last she spied at that room's upper end another iron door, on which was writ, be not too bold. Whereto, though she did bend her earnest mind, yet wist not what it might intend. It is part of Spenser's brilliance that Britomart is never able to figure out what these contradictory messages want her to do or not do. Yet she rescues the girl anyway. Now, here comes the story. Once upon a time, a young woman, 20 years old, decided to leave the nest, or rather to fly the coop. She had been working since leaving school between since leaving school in an ancient firm of merchant bankers, which subsequently went bankrupt. No connection between these two events. She had not gone to university in England because, having set the exams from the two colleges, the two only colleges that are set apart for women in Oxford and Cambridge, she had been judged too young and told to try again next year. So here she was in the trustee department of Baring Brothers, surrounded by old men in mourning dress. Now, that is English for tuxedo and has nothing to do with funerals. And she was wasting her life. She decided to be both Britomart and the girl she rescued, and leave England for the United States of America, the fabled land of freedom and democracy. Now, this was the bold part, not least because it involved an extremely naive notion of what the United States is actually like. But her parents, wisely as it turned out, advised her to emigrate instead to Canada. So much more like England, dear. In any case, they expected she would come home cured within a year. And so this was the not too bold decision. So in November 1957, she embarked on an ocean liner sailing for Quebec. This made the all too familiar term from literary criticism, the rite of passage, almost too literal. In November, the Atlantic is pretty rough. From thence, by train to Toronto, where she appeared on the doorstep of a generous family who, having merely met her parents at a cocktail party in England, had offered their home as a temporary second nest. This was a university family. The father was a professor in the Department of English at University College, and the son and daughter were both undergraduates there. This fostered in our... Back up. Never had she experienced a level of conversation such as took place at their table. That is, intelligent. This fostered in our adventuress a major change of plan. She too would go to college, better late than never. This was accomplished by working two jobs, in an office by day, in a restaurant by night. Be bold, and everywhere be bold. She has never looked back, except to say thank you. To the Endicott family, she later married the son. To University College, where she discovered at last what she was meant to do. To Victoria College, who 6 years later offered her a teaching position in their English department as part of a bold experiment in the hiring of women. Now comes the fun part, giving you advice based on these three items: the joke, the poem, and the story, which by now you will have discerned is autobiographical. If you have to choose between being bold and not too bold, you should almost always choose the first. As the great poet John Milton wrote at the end of Paradise Lost, the world was all before them, where to choose their place. And this was after Adam and Eve had made the world's first serious mistake, choosing the apple of alarming knowledge over the calm space of unthinking obedience. But thrust out into the world, they discovered that they had earned the right to choose indefinitely. As you go out, choose carefully, but don't be afraid to take back your first choice if it doesn't suit you. That's really important. If you are a woman, wear armor. This applies also to men. But both sexes should take it off at night. Challenge convention. Don't try to be clever. Be clever. Don't go to law school because of its fabled ability to ensure you a large income or to please your parents. Lawyers have the lowest level of job satisfaction, studies say. Do make yourselves aware of what is going on elsewhere in the world, most of which is quite horrible. Be social activists. The advice of Sheryl Sandberg, the chairman of Facebook, lean in, which means roughly the same as be bold in your own interest, should always be balanced by lean out, which also means roughly be bold in your concern for other folks less lucky than yourselves, especially in other countries. Your country has a much better reputation in the world than does the United States, which makes it easier for you to be effective. I'm telling you. I've often thought I should come back. But if you need to carry a big stick, speak softly. I warrant you, as warned Luciano Pavarotti, the tenor is more dangerous than the baritone. I warrant you will have as much difficulty figuring out what advice that gives you as did Britomart in her moment of greatest challenge. Shall I say that again? The tenor is more dangerous than the baritone. Let me pass on to you my personal mantra, which I developed when my second husband of 33 years dumped me. Get as much pleasure as possible and do one good deed a day. Let me correct that slightly. Get as much pleasure as you can afford and do at least one good deed a day. It has worked for me. Finally, 2 more aphorisms, one of which is my own. Now, I never attended my own graduation because I was young and foolish and skeptical of ritual. But here are the aphorisms. The gods give us habit in lieu of happiness, but ritual is habit raised to the level of the gods. Thank you.